Hello, welcome to Inside Politics. I'm Anastasia Lavrina. This week, all eyes are on Moscow as Chinese President Xi Jinping attends Russia's May 9 Victory Day commemorations, a symbolic gesture loaded with geopolitical meaning. Just a few months from now, President Vladimir Putin is expected to make a return visit to Beijing. These meetings are more than ceremonial. They signal a growing rapport between two world powers, one that has intensified in the shadow of mounting pressure from the West. What's really driving this deepening alliance? Is it a tactical union built on shared grievances against US and NATO dominance? Or is it the natural alignment of two countries increasingly leaning on one another, economically, military, even ideologically? Let's take a look at the latest from Moscow as it prepares for the upcoming ceremonies.
Moscow is once again preparing to honor one of the most solemn and unifying days in its national calendar. Victory Day, marked every year on May 9th. Streets are being cleared, military units rehearsing in perfect formation, and Red Square is being transformed into a stage of national pride and historical memory. But this year's commemorations carry added diplomatic weight. President Xi Jinping of China will attend the ceremonies in person, a move that Russian officials and scholars see as deeply symbolic and highly strategic. His presence on this historic day is not only a gesture of respect for the Soviet victory in the Great Patriotic War, it is also a signal to the world that the Moscow-Beijing partnership is growing deeper, broader, and more coordinated. Security has been visibly heightened across the capital, with air defense systems tested and parade units on standby. Meanwhile, the final touches are being made to wreath-laying ceremonies, aerial flyovers, and a nationally televised address from President Vladimir Putin. For Russian analysts, Xi's attendance reaffirms shared resistance to Western pressure and a vision of a multipolar world. Joint economic and defense projects are expected to feature prominently in discussions behind closed doors. This year's Victory Day, then, is more than just a pageant of remembrance. It is a projection of unity between two powers who believe their time on the world stage has only just begun. For Russia and China, May 9th is both memory and momentum.
So let's unpack this now as I'm joined by two guests with sharp perspectives. From China, we have Alex, Reportify journalist and analyst with a focus on Russia's global strategy. And from Singapore, we have with us today Dr. James Darcy, a seasoned commentator on China's foreign relations. I'll start with you, if I may, Alex. So, with President Xi attending Victory Day in Moscow, what signal is this intended to send about Russia's diplomatic priorities, particularly as it faces continued isolation from the West?
Well, it's very clear who is an ally to Russia now. When you sanction a country into an oblivion, the collective West I'm referring to, you have only one direction to go, either by yourself or you find one of the largest economies in the world that can put politics aside and get on with business. That is China. You see China continually moving into Russia, whether it's the purchase of natural gas, whether it's the purchase of machinery to build pipelines, or the new energy vehicle industry that is moving forward in that country. We are seeing history be rewritten here. I think the trust when it comes to Europe is pretty much over, and we're turning a new page in history here. And it looks like it's China and Russia hand in hand moving forward.
Well, James, how does this visit align with Beijing's broader foreign policy posture? Is China subtly recalibrated its diplomatic weight in favor of strategic convergence with Russia?
I don't know if China's recalibrating as much as the Chinese-Russian relationship has been a very close relationship. These are two leaders who have met very frequently. It's an uneven relationship. With other words, China is the more powerful of the two partners, although Russia has the ambition of being a world power. They have a number of common interests, there's no question about it, in Central Asia in terms of countering the United States, in terms of furthering interests in various parts of the world, but they also differ on a fair amount of things, including competing in certain parts of the world.
Indeed, very interesting. So, Alex, while some argue that Moscow is seeking alternatives to Western partnerships, how much of this shift is long-term alignment rather than short-term necessity?
It's long all the way. Russia is long what the world needs. You need lumber, Russia's got it. You need oil and gas, Russia's got it. You know, even in the mineral sector. And we're talking a country that has been pretty much left out in the cold to have its economy crushed. The Americans couldn't do it on the battlefield, so they tried to do it financially. Didn't work. So what happens is it brings both of these closer together. And I mean, the ambitions, well, that's the Americans and, you know, the collective West that has forced Russia into this position. And we've seen, you know, a prelude to what a NATO war could be. We've seen that, a proxy using the Ukraine to try to destabilize Russia. Didn't work. Tried to sanction it into an oblivion. Didn't work. And it's just an embarrassment over embarrassment, and $500 billion spent. The Americans are upset. The taxpayers are upset. And yes, we are going to see a further relationship go here. We're seeing over $300 billion being traded between these partners already, and the sky is the limit. Only way to go is up from here.
So, James, China's commitment to multilateralism has been consistent. Does a closer relationship with Russia enhance that principle or complicate Beijing's balancing act?
Well, I think in principle, of course, it does further the concept of multilateralism. Let's keep in mind, it's multilateralism on China's terms. It's not multilateralism by definition. I also think that we've got to be careful with jumping to conclusions yet. We're no doubt in a period of great uncertainty. We're in a period of transition, but we're not clear what that transition will be. We've had a Trump administration that in its second term, in its initial month, has been significantly confrontational with China, but we're seeing the first Chinese-US talks next week. Similarly, we're seeing, to some degree, a restructuring of the transatlantic alliance, in which primarily China would like to take advantage of that. But what that balance in the transatlantic alliance will be remains to be seen. This could very well turn out to be a very healthy rebalancing of those relationships.
Alex, this is indeed very interesting and significant point. How do you think, to what extent does the Kremlin view deepening ties with Beijing as a counterbalance to NATO expansion and Western sanctions, or there is something else?
Western sanctions, balancing. Listen, Russia doesn't need the West for anything, period. That ship has sailed. It sailed a long time ago, a few years ago. In fact, you want to rebalance and firm up friendships in collective West countries? Not happening. You can ask any owner of property, any owner of a business that is Russian, that had business outside of Russia. They have either been sanctioned, they've had their bank accounts seized, or they've been outright banned from entering any other country but their own. Russia gets the message very clear. Let's be good buddies with China. China is the future. There's nothing American can do except continue to watch its yearly amount of money skyrocket, that country continues to fall into debt to the tune of almost $40 trillion to its own people. Quite disgraceful, if you ask me.
Alex, one additional question to you. It's clear about the Western sanctions and the decision of Russia to form a new alliances to deepen the ties with China. But NATO expansion and the future of this military alliance, do you think Russia and China would like to counterbalance it, or actually they don't care about the future of this organization?
Well, we've seen what NATO's had for the last couple of years. Not much. Just a bunch of old equipment shipped into the Ukraine that's been blown up and put on display in the Kremlin. So are these countries worried about NATO? No. These countries are not mostly in the offensive mode. Look at China here and its annual budget for military. China hasn't been at war for almost 5 decades. So it's a country that's continually building up its arms to protect its people if there is some sort of invasion or something attack in China's island of Taiwan there. So I mean, it's interesting that we always have this: should we fear NATO? Should we build up against NATO? NATO has shown its true colors here over the last 2 years. It's ineffective, doesn't do much, and of course China should and Russia should continue to move forward to build their military and much stronger for sure into the future.
James, on matters like Taiwan and the South China Sea, is there political value in appearing aligned with Russia, or does it risk undermining China's claim to regional stability?
I don't think that China's relationship with Russia is by definition undermines regional stability. One can argue what brings stability and what doesn't. By and large, let's keep in mind that much of Asia is a very stable region. Sure, of course, you've got the blow up at the moment between India and Pakistan, no question about it. If you define the Middle East as West Asia, then you've got major issues. But certainly in other parts of Asia, whether that's Central Asia, Southeast Asia, or East Asia, you've got a relatively stable situation on which, unless you had a conflict between China and Russia, that relationship is not going to upset the apple cart.
Alex, is there concern in Moscow that this growing relationship is asymmetrical, particularly in trade and infrastructure investment?
It's going to continue to build. Look at the car industry in Russia right now. The traditional petrol cars are on their way out. Companies like BYD, NIO, a lot of the stellar cars that are coming out of China continue to hit the streets. Just go and watch Moscow. You will see how many of those car industries move in there. That's China. China's moving forward. They're opening up banks. Bank of China is opening up throughout Russia. We will continue to see that. As old Western brands move out or even attempt to come back, China will definitely fill in for that for certain.
Well, James, how does Beijing assess the risks of being perceived as enabling or legitimizing Moscow's positions in global forums?
Well, I think that much of what dictates Chinese and Russian responses in global forums is really a countering of the United States. That does not always work in China's favor. If you look at the discussions that are evolving at the moment in Syria between the new government of Syria and China, part of those discussions are being to some degree hampered by the fact that that China supported the Bashar al-Assad regime in the past. So, with other words, it's China's engagement and the way China, or Russia for that matter, engage in certain issues that's going to determine how those relationships proceed.
Alex, now I would like to enlarge the scope of our discussion today. Organizations like BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization have been cited as alternatives to Western-led models. Does Russia see these as tools to reframe global governance?
Absolutely. why would you want to partner yourself with, the Americans, the Brits? I mean, when they sanction you, they pretty much cut you off from their banking industry. They pretty much don't allow your currency to trade against their own dollar. Forget it. It's over. The BRICS, of course, is moving forward. And let's not forget China's Belt and Road, BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative here. This has gone to over 154 countries. They have built this through, of course, including Russia. I'm quite astonished that the Western media will focus so much on the old Biden Built Back Better, which ended up being Built Back Bankrupt, when you have China holding hands to 154 countries, building ports, building airports, building railways, and moving into the futures. I think BRICS is important, but it's a minute part of actually what the Belt and Road Initiative really is going to be about. And good luck to the collective West countries that have opted mostly to be out on the outside of this, while China forges forward, Russia goes along the way, and it's BRICS and it's BRI coming at you, no doubt about it.
New alliances, especially when it comes to economic global cooperation. James, looking ahead, can Beijing simultaneously preserve economic ties with the West while deepening a political understanding with Moscow? You yourself previously said about the potential for the meeting between the representatives of the United States and China, so probably there will be some changes.
I have no doubt that China wants to maintain economic relations with the United States. It certainly wants to benefit, if it can, from the crisis in relations between the United States and Europe. And at the same time, as it has been doing for now several decades, it will be building out its economic relations with others. I think we've got to be careful in that we have not really seen institutions that China and Russia have sought to erect, BRICS, or for that matter, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, having a major impact. Now, it's early days. They may very well evolve, but they haven't so far had a paradigm impact, if you wish. I think where you're going to see focus is on potentially restructuring things like the United Nations, which increasingly has become an inefficient, somewhat dysfunctional organization. Certainly when you look, for example, at the situation in either Ukraine or the Middle East.
James, that's very interesting, the point you touched, restructurization of the United Nations. Do you think it's possible while among the permanent Security Council member states there are still United States and Russia and China as well?
Well, look, I don't think that anything is going to move until you break through that veto structure. Somebody is going to veto this, if not more than one party, certainly with the kind of government that we have in power at the moment. So I'm not suggesting that we're about to see a restructuring of the UN. I'm suggesting that the UN is in desperate need, and the UN is really the only global organization in that sense that we have. And I don't see that the problems or the vacuums that are created by the United Nations dysfunctionality being filled by others like the BRICS, or for that matter, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization.
And Alex, just to conclude our today's talk, I would like to know your opinion on the same question. Global order, restructurization of the global organizations like the United Nations, for example, where do you see the future stance of the superpowers within the international structures?
Well, let's look at the United Nations. I think it's irrelevant. What has it actually done over the last 20 or 30 years? Not much. When there's veto powers, as our other guests have said on there, somebody doesn't agree with something, it could be 194 to 1, and that one veto vote will shoot it down. forget it. No one cares about the United Nations. The average person doesn't really follow it anymore. They can sanction people. They can, bring in the U.S. Security Council, United Nations Security Council meetings if it's important. But those are proven irrelevant as well. We hear all this talk about BRICS, but once again, we are missing the big point here. The Belt and Road Initiative, the BRI, is a vision of China. I live here, I see it. I'm in a city that is an industrial city, a beautiful city of Chongqing here in China, a population of 30-some million people that is striving to move forward to do global trade. This is what's going to move the attitudes of countries. Get on board with the BRI, see your economy prosper, see your influence in the regions, whether it's Southeast Asia, whether it's Russia, or the other continents. Partner up with the Americans and the Brits. Look out, because it's a good possibility you're going to be dragged into a war and spend up to $500 billion fighting for no reason.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Well, from the Red Square to the Great Hall of the People, the symbolism couldn't be clearer. But is it a lasting substance or temporary posturing? What's undeniable is that Moscow and Beijing are talking and walking closer together. As their paths converge, the world watches for tremors, especially in the West. I'm Anastasia Lavrina, and that's all for this edition of Inside Politics. See you next time.